An old dog is left behind at a gas station. He doesn't bark, doesn't chase after the truck. He just lies there in the rain, waiting for something that will never return. A grieving man lies alone after the death of his son, heart frozen, trust long gone. They don't call to each other, don't touch, but on a cold, rainy night, he lays down a blanket, and the dog follows him home. What begins as a quiet act of kindness becomes a journey of healing, where love needs no words and loyalty becomes the last miracle. But when someone shows up claiming the dog belongs to them, will Cole lose the only soul who's ever stayed? And when he's injured deep in the woods, who will risk everything to save him? This is a story that leaves you silent after every chapter, and wanting more. The sun was slipping behind the tree line when the truck rolled into the dusty gas station off Highway 67. The place had seen better days, faded signage, a creaky ice machine that hadn't worked in years, and a single overhead lamp that buzzed with tired indifference. The driver didn't turn off the engine. He stepped out, muttered something to the attendant, filled his tank, grabbed a soda from the cooler, and then returned to the cab. No one noticed the old dog tethered to the rear bumper. It was large, brindled, with a grizzled muzzle and tired eyes. Its legs trembled slightly as it stood, watching the man with the quiet desperation of someone who had followed too many vehicles too far for too long. When the truck started up again and pulled out onto the road, the rope snapped tight against the concrete post it had been tied to. The dog didn't bark. It just watched, unmoving, as the red taillights disappeared into the thickening twilight. The gas station manager, a broad man named Dennis, noticed it then. "Hey," he shouted, stepping out from the office. "You forgot your—" But the truck was already gone. Just the sound of crickets rising in its place. Dennis looked down at the dog. It didn't growl or flinch, just stood there, rain-specked eyes staring off down the highway. "Well, damn," he muttered. "Not my problem." He went back inside. The dog remained. It circled once, lay down beside the pump, and rested its head on its paws. That night, no one came for it. It didn't whine. It didn't try to leave. It just waited, as if time might still bend backward. The next morning, the dog was still there. Customers came and went, motorcyclists heading west, a family on vacation with noisy kids, a man in a suit on his Bluetooth headset. Some glanced at the dog. Most ignored it. Dennis tried shooing it off with a broom. It stood up, took 3 steps, then lay back down in the same spot. Eventually, he gave up. By the second evening, a cardboard box with a blanket had appeared under the station's awning. No one admitted to placing it. The dog ignored it at first, but later, when the wind picked up and the night dipped cold, it crawled inside without a sound. That was when a man named Cole first noticed it. He had pulled up to the farthest pump, a dented blue sedan idling low. He stepped out slowly, as if every joint resisted. Late 40s, maybe 50s. Lean, gray in his beard, the kind of man who no longer looked at his own reflection. As he filled his tank, his eyes wandered. And there it was, a shape curled beneath the flickering light, barely visible, eyes half closed but watching. Cole paused. He looked for a collar, a tag. There was none. He said nothing. Just got back in the car, drove away, and thought about it all the way home. Cole lived 3 miles down a narrow gravel road, in a single-story house that hadn't heard laughter in years. The porch light didn't work. The yard was overgrown. There was a mailbox with faded lettering that read, Cole S. Bennett, U.S. Army Ret, though no letters ever came. Inside, the house was clean but still, too still. The walls were bare, save for one photograph hanging crook in the hallway, a teenage boy in a baseball cap, frozen mid-smile. Dust clung to the frame like memory. Cole didn't speak much these days, not to his neighbors, not to the cashier at the market, not even to himself. He had learned long ago that silence was easier. After his son died in that car accident 3 winters ago, words stopped working the way they used to. His wife had left 6 months after the funeral, said she couldn't stay in a house where a door never opened and a man never cried. Cole drank now. Not the kind that makes you loud or cruel, just the kind that dulls. Each evening he sat on the porch with a can of cheap beer, staring into the woods like he was waiting for someone to come back from them. It was on one of those evenings, 2 days after seeing the dog, that he stopped by the gas station again. He didn't need gas. He just wanted to see if it was still there. It was. Same spot, same position, curled under the awning, a ghost of itself. Its fur was matted now. There was a gash above one paw, likely from the rope it had chewed through. A plastic bowl of water sat beside it, half full. Someone must have cared, if only a little. Cole watched from the driver's seat. He didn't get out. Just sat there with the engine running, staring through the windshield. The dog didn't move, didn't even blink. But somehow he felt its eyes lock with his quiet, old eyes that had also stopped expecting anything from the world. The next day he returned. Again, he said nothing. This time he brought a folded towel and placed it near the box, just far enough not to scare the dog. He didn't pet it. He didn't even try. But when he backed away, the dog looked at him not with hope, not with fear, just acknowledgement, as if it understood not to ask for anything, but was grateful he'd left something anyway. By the end of that week, Cole began leaving bits of food, small things, pieces of jerky, half a sandwich. The dog would wait until he walked away before eating. There was no wagging tail, no barking, just quiet. And something began to shift. Each evening, Cole's thoughts wandered less toward the bottle and more toward the weather, whether it would rain, whether the wind would be too cold for an old dog sleeping alone. He started bringing thicker blankets, heavier food, clean water. One morning, Dennis, the station manager, muttered as Cole laid down a proper dog bed. "You taking him home or what?" Cole didn't answer. He just looked at the dog, then got in his car and left. But that night, when a thunderstorm rolled over the hills, bringing sheets of rain and howling wind, Cole stood by his window watching it all. He hadn't lit a fire in years, but that night he did. He left the front door cracked open and placed an old flannel blanket near the hearth. He waited. The rain fell harder. And somewhere out there, under the gas station awning, the old dog shivered while inside a broken man's heart, something that had long been frozen gave its first small thaw. The storm came in low and angry, rolling over the horizon like a warning that had waited too long to speak. By late afternoon, the clouds had turned the sky to bruised iron. Wind swept across the hills, bending the tall grasses and rattling every loose panel on the old gas station roof. The dog, still nameless, lay curled beneath the awning, eyes barely open, nose tucked beneath his hind leg. The cardboard box he once used had turned to mush. His bed was soaked through, and yet he did not move. He had known worse nights. Inside the house down the road, Cole stared at the fire in his living room. He hadn't lit a hearth in 3 years, but now it crackled quietly, casting long shadows across the wood-paneled walls. Outside his front door, the rain came down hard, drumming against the roof and pouring off the gutters like 1,000 falling strings. Cole stood at the window. He told himself not to care. He told himself it was just a dog. But the thought wouldn't leave him of that old, wet creature lying alone, too tired to bark, too proud to beg. He could almost see it, the tremble in the paws, the soaking fur pressed against concrete, the eyes that would not close no matter how cold it got. He grabbed his coat. The wind nearly tore the door from his hands as he stepped outside. Rain slapped his face, instantly soaking his shoulders and jeans. He walked fast, the gravel road slick beneath his boots, every step kicking up mud. By the time he reached the station, the only light was the flickering fluorescent bulb above Pump 3. And there he was. The dog hadn't moved. Cole slowed down, chest rising and falling, steam lifting from his breath. The rain made a halo around the animal, each drop darkening the fur, forming rivulets on the ground. The dog raised his head slowly, blinking at the figure before him. No bark, no sound, just recognition. Cole knelt. He didn't speak. He pulled from his coat pocket a thick, flannel blanket folded tight and laid it gently over the dog's back. For a moment, the dog didn't respond. Then he shifted, ever so slightly, pressing into the warmth, into the kindness. Cole reached out a tentative hand. The dog didn't flinch, His fur was coarse and damp beneath Cole's fingers, but there was life there. Warmth. A heartbeat. Something real. "Damn fool," Cole muttered, voice barely audible over the storm. "Why are you still waiting?" The dog didn't answer. Of course he didn't. Cole stayed a few minutes longer, shielding him with his body from the wind. Then he stood, wiped the water from his face, and turned to go water. But halfway to his car, he stopped. The sound behind him was soft, barely a shuffle. When he turned, the dog was standing, blanket still draped across his back, legs unsteady but moving. He was following. Cole stood there in the rain, eyes wide, throat tight. "I didn't say come," he whispered. But the dog came anyway. At the house, Cole opened the door and stepped aside. The dog paused at the threshold. Then, with a slow, limping step, he entered. He lay near the fire without being told. The blanket slipped from his back and steamed beside him as he curled into the heat. Cole stood watching for a long time. Then, finally, he sat in the chair across from the hearth. No words. Just the sound of rain on the windows and the soft breath of two souls warming together in the silence. Morning light crept through the dusty blinds like a guest too polite to knock. The rain had passed, leaving the world outside washed and quiet. Inside the house, the fire had burned down to a soft glow. Cole sat on the floor, legs crossed, a steaming mug of black coffee in one hand. Across from him, curled on the same flannel blanket, lay the dog. His fur had dried overnight, but it clung to him in thick mats. One ear flopped awkwardly when he shifted. His breathing was slow and heavy, like someone who had finally, after too many nights on concrete, learned how to rest. Cole sipped his coffee and said nothing. The silence wasn't awkward. It was companionable. At some point, the dog opened his eyes and lifted his head. Their gazes met again, not as strangers anymore, but as two creatures who had survived separate storms and now sat together in the aftermath. "You're a big one," Cole muttered. The dog blinked. "Big and quiet. Like a damn tank." He said it without thinking. But as soon as the word left his mouth, something about it clicked like a key finding the right lock. Tank. It wasn't cute. It wasn't clever. But it fit. The dog didn't react much, just let his head rest back down with a soft exhale, as if agreeing to it in his own way. "All right then," Cole said, standing up slowly. "Tank it is." Later that morning, Cole drove into town. Not for liquor for once. He bought a large bag of dog food, a metal bowl, a bottle of shampoo, and an old but sturdy brush from the consignment store. When he returned, Tank was exactly where he had left him, as if the living room now belonged to him, and he was merely allowing Cole to visit. "Time for a wash," Cole said. It wasn't easy. Tank didn't growl, but he stiffened as soon as the water ran in the tub. Cole worked slowly, hands steady, voice low. The shampoo turned the brown water black as it ran down the drain. He scrubbed around old scars and lifted one paw gently to rinse the pads. "There's a good boy," he murmured. "Takes more than some dirt to scare you, huh?" Once dry, Tank looked almost regal, if a little ragged. His coat still bore the signs of hard years, but in the warm light there was something noble beneath it all, a weight that came not from his body, but from having endured and endured and endured. That evening, Cole found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, talking aloud. "See that shelf, Tank? That used to hold trophies," he said, gesturing to the corner. "Baseball, track. My kid could run like the wind." Tank didn't look up, but he listened. Cole could feel it. He talked more, voice quiet, steady, about his son, about the car accident, about the way the house had gone silent after. He didn't say everything. Not yet. But he said enough to feel the crack widen in the wall he'd built inside himself. Later, as the fire danced again and Tank lay beside it, Cole crouched down and did something else he hadn't done in a long time. He reached forward and rested his forehead gently against the dog's. Tank didn't move. He just breathed in and breathed out. Two wounded hearts, finally learning the shape of peace. The days settled into something almost like rhythm. Each morning, Cole rose with the sun, brewed strong coffee, and filled Tank's bowl before his own. They walked together slow loops around the edge of the property, where the pine trees whispered in the breeze and the gravel crunched gently under boots and paws. Tank didn't move quickly, but he moved with purpose, as if each step reminded his body that it was still needed. Inside the house, things had changed. The silence, once heavy and bitter, had become warm and breathable. Cole had stopped drinking. He dusted off shelves, opened windows, let air into rooms that had been sealed for years. It wasn't a full transformation, but it was the kind that starts deep and spreads in quiet ways. One afternoon, a storm rolled through again, nothing like the last, just a passing gust with gray skies and light wind. Cole was stacking firewood near the porch when he heard the crash inside. He rushed in, heart skipping. Nothing was broken, just a photo frame lying face down on the floor. Tank stood nearby, guilty and still. He had bumped the edge of the table while settling into his spot by the fireplace. Cole knelt down, picked up the frame, and turned it over. It was the photo. The one of his son, taken the summer before the accident. Baseball cap turned backward, mouth open in a half laugh, arms flung around Cole's shoulders. They were both younger then, less worn. The colors had faded a little, but the life in it remained, stubborn and bright. Cole hadn't looked at that photo in over a year. Not really. It had become part of the wall background noise he tried not to hear. Now he stared. He sat on the floor and let the picture rest in his lap. Tank moved closer, slowly, and lay down beside him, his chin gently touching Cole's boot, like an anchor. "I used to sit right there," Cole said, pointing at the old couch. "He'd be across from me, throwing popcorn at the TV during late games. Said it made the team lucky." He let out a breath. It wasn't quite a laugh, not quite a sob. "I didn't even know he was out that night," Cole whispered. "Took the car without asking. Didn't tell me where he was going. Just never came back." The wind moved through the house like a breath held too long and finally released. I blamed myself. Still do. Tank shifted, just enough to press a little closer. I wasn't there for him, not really. Not the way I should have been, and after I couldn't be there for anyone, not even myself. Cole set the picture upright again, but this time, not on the dusty shelf where it had hung out of sight. He placed it gently on the mantel, just above Tank's spot by the fire. A place of honor. "I didn't mean to live this long," Cole admitted quietly. He looked down at Tank, who blinked once, slow and steady. "But I think maybe you showed up so I wouldn't have to live it alone." That night, the fire burned bright. Tank slept peacefully, one paw twitching in a dream. And for the first time in a very long time, Cole climbed into bed without leaving the light on, no longer afraid of the dark. The news came on a Tuesday. The sky was pale, the wind smelled like pine, and Cole had just returned from their morning walk, a slow, peaceful loop around the edge of the woods, with Tank padding beside him, tail swaying like a quiet metronome. They were home now. Tank curled on his usual spot by the fire, eyes half-lidded in the comfort of routine. Cole stood in the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel when the knock came. 3 short taps. Hesitant. It was Dennis, the gas station manager. He rarely came out this far. He looked awkward on the porch, shifting from foot to foot like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Just got a little situation." Cole stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, Dennis glanced at Tank. "Well, damn. He looks a whole lot better than he did under that awning." Cole said nothing, just watched as Dennis sat down on the edge of the armchair, palms resting on his knees. "So listen," Dennis began. "Some lady came through the station yesterday. Said she was passing through town last week and saw the dog. Recognized him. She said it belonged to her father, who passed a few months ago, and her brother must dumped him when they moved out. She's asking if she can take him back." Cole's face didn't move, but something behind his ribs tightened. "She said his name was Duke," Dennis added. "Apparently he used to guard her dad's barn in Nebraska." Cole glanced toward the fire. Tank didn't move. Maybe he didn't hear. Maybe he did. "She left her number," Dennis said. offering a folded slip of paper. Figured it was your call. She seemed decent. Real sad about it all. Said she didn't know her brother did that to the dog. Cole took the paper without looking at it. Dennis stood. Anyway, just passing it along. After he left, Cole sat in silence. The paper rested on the table, untouched. He looked at Tank. Duke? Huh? The dog didn't react. He blinked once, shifted his weight, then let out a slow breath through his nose. Cole smiled faintly. Well, sorry, buddy. You don't look like a Duke to me. He stood up, paced the living room, then walked outside and stared at the horizon. The air was cold and dry. Somewhere, a hawk called out, distant and sharp. He turned back and looked at the window. Inside, Tank had sat up. His eyes followed Cole, steady and calm. That same look from the first night, the same weight of something unspoken but real. This dog had seen his worst, had slept beside his guilt, had walked with him through grief and pulled him, silent and patient, out of the dark. Cole stepped inside, tore the paper in half, and dropped it into the fireplace. As it curled into ash, he knelt by Tank and placed a hand on his back. You're not going anywhere. Tank didn't wag his tail. He didn't have to. He just leaned, slowly, into Cole's hand, an old dog who had been discarded, reclaimed, renamed, and now finally chosen. The air smelled of pine and frost that morning, one of those crisp days where the sun shone but gave no warmth. Cole and Tank set out early, taking the long trail that wound through the backwoods behind the house. It had become their new habit. The world was quieter there. No roads, no voices, just the crunch of boots and paw pads on fallen leaves and the occasional chirp of birds rising from the underbrush. Cole walked with his hands in his jacket pockets, a thermos of coffee slung over one shoulder. Tank kept pace beside him, slower now, but steady. He limped a little on cold mornings, a leftover gift from years no one had seen, but he never fell behind. About halfway through the trail, Cole stepped off the main path to check a break in the fence line, an old post he'd been meaning to repair since spring. The ground was soft from recent rain, hidden beneath a thin layer of leaves. His foot gave way. There was no shout, no scream, just a sharp inhale as the earth slipped beneath him. And then he was falling. His leg twisted hard, then something cracked. He hit bottom maybe 5, 6 feet down, landing on his side against a bed of roots and wet rock. Pain shot through his ankle, sharp and immediate. He tried to stand. Couldn't. Tried again. A flash of white sparked behind his eyes, and he collapsed back into the dirt. Above him, Tank appeared, head leaning over the edge of the small ravine, ears up, eyes locked on Cole's. No panic, no bark, just that silent steadiness. I'm okay, Cole rasped. Just twisted, maybe broken. He reached for his phone. No signal. Of course. The forest had gone still. No wind, no birds. Just the distant sound of a squirrel chattering somewhere far off, as if the world didn't yet know someone was in trouble. Tank paced the edge, nose low, reading the ground. He barked once, sharp, deliberate, then vanished. Tank, Cole called out, heart suddenly gripped with fear. Hey, don't leave me, damn it. But the trees swallowed the sound. Minutes passed. Then more. Cole's breath came shallow now. His leg throbbed with every heartbeat. The cold of the earth was beginning to creep into his back. He leaned against a tree root and closed his eyes, just for a second. When he opened them again, he heard it. Footsteps. Not 4 paws, 2 boots. Then voices. Over here. Fear. Crackling leaves. A flashlight beam cutting through branches. 2 hikers appeared above the ravine, one crouching as the other radioed for help. Behind them, panting, muzzle muddy, tongue hanging, stood Tank, dragging behind him something long and familiar. Cole's flannel jacket. The one he'd draped over his shoulders that morning. Tank had pulled it off him in the fall, dragged it through the woods, found the hikers near the trailhead, barked, pulled. Lead. Cole stared up at him through the pain. Good boy, he whispered. Later in the hospital, A nurse told him how rare it was. Said the dog wouldn't stop until they followed. Like he knew exactly what to do. Cole just nodded. Because of course he did. Tank had known what to do from the very beginning. By the time Cole came home from the hospital, spring had begun to loosen winter's grip. The trees budded soft green along their edges, and the morning fog lifted just a little earlier each day. He returned with a cast on his leg and a pair of crutches he hated, but also with something else. A name that people in town suddenly knew. Not that quiet guy down the gravel road. Now it was. That's the man with the dog. The one that saved him. Tank met him at the porch when he came home like he'd never left. The dog didn't leap or bark. He just sat there, tail brushing the wood slowly, eyes locked on Cole's, patient as always. Cole lowered himself to one knee, ignoring the protest from his ankle. "Well," he murmured, voice catching on something deeper. "Looks like we're even." He stayed kneeling for a long time, his forehead pressed gently against Tank's. Word spread. Small towns are good at that. The story grew in the telling. Some said Tank dragged the jacket 5 miles. Others claimed he barked at 3 different hikers before the right ones listened. The version Cole told was simpler. He didn't save my life that day. He'd already saved it long before. Tank became a quiet fixture at the gas station again, but this time not under the awning. He walked beside Cole when they came in for coffee, lay at his feet on the porch bench in the afternoons, sat calmly when children asked to pet him. Someone offered to build a plaque. Cole declined. "He's not a hero," he said. "He's just a dog who wasn't done loving." But later, without telling anyone, Cole did something else. He took the photo of his son off the mantel. Not to put it away, but to hang it on a new wall right above Tank's bed, beside a new framed picture, one taken by a hiker after the rescue, where Cole sits in the woods, mud-streaked and grinning, his hand resting on Tank's head. In the photo, Tank is looking off into the trees, his body tired, his eyes calm, his presence undeniable. A friend who stayed. Years passed. Tank grew slower, whiter around the muzzle. His hearing faded, and sometimes his legs didn't obey like they used to. But he never stopped following Cole. Not once. Say. On the day Tank didn't wake up curled beside the fireplace, one paw touching the edge of Cole's boot, the whole house went silent. Cole sat with him for hours. No tears, no words. Just the fire. Just the quiet. And when the time came, he buried him beneath the pine tree out back, wrapped in the same flannel blanket from that first night. No headstone. Just a small wooden sign carved by hand. Tank, the dog who stayed. Now, when travelers stop by the station, sometimes they hear the story. Some think it's made up. Some don't understand why an old man still talks to the empty space beside him on the porch. But some do. And when they look close enough, on clear mornings when the sun hits just right, they swear they see it. A big, brindled shadow lying near the fire pit. Waiting. Still watching. Still home. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of this story. If it touched your heart even in a small way, we hope it stays with you long after the final words. For more heartfelt stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share your feelings or reflections in the comments below. Every voice matters here.